what we did was build an entire start to finish automated journey that brought prospective students all the way through the application process and converted them into ultimately on the campus enrolled tuition paying students, right? We generated over 25,000 leads and over 1,000 applications during that short window, and this story is how we did that. But I understand the ALU context, the campus on the island of Mauritius, right? It's not how you think about marketing automation. It's not how you think about small business. But at the end of the day, creating a scalable and repeatable experience and using technology to design systems that support that is something that every small business on the planet can benefit from. So as you watch this, as you listen to the stories that we tell and the tactics that we use, I challenge you to draw those parallels and to convert this, if you will, to a lens that makes it as impactful as possible for you. Because what we did here, while it's impressive in its own right, what I believe is most powerful is that this can work for every business, agnostic of industry, of model, or of of business shape or size. I'm Greg Jenkins, and my business is Monkeypod Marketing, where I focus on helping entrepreneurs automate parts of their business using technology and systems. And my emphasis is on education, making sure that they understand what they're building and the ways in which it's impacting what they're able to do. I helped design and implement every aspect of the automated funnel and journey for the prospective and current applicants for ALU. ALU is, of course, the African Leadership University.
So there's two phases of the project. It was 14 months that I was a part of it. The first phase was to launch a school of business. Well, actually, it was to launch an MBA, and then it was to launch a full-fledged school of business, which included an MBA program. We did that in 4 months. The second phase, after we'd done that successfully, we built the systems and we built the team to take the first class, and then left a machine in place to promote and fill a second class and so forth. That first class graduated about 3 months ago, and they've got three cohorts that have gone through now with essentially the same content, same machine, and much of the same, all the same processes, much as of the same team that we left in place, which is really exciting. And then the second phase for me, and I brought Greg along, and how we grew the team out too, was taking the systems, the processes, the strategy, the thinking of journey and facilitating that journey through automation, taking that and centralizing all the sales, marketing, and admissions under one leadership. And that's what I did, was move that to the undergraduate network of universities. There was a home-based campus in Mauritius, and the idea was how do we systematically scale these campuses across the continent of Africa.
The role that we played was to really help connect this school with the people for whom it's the right fit, is help make sure that they're aware of it, and then create an experience that encouraged them to apply and finish their application, because it was like a 9-stage application process. And so we used automation in every aspect of that journey. And I think that what's probably so powerful about this experience is that ALU is going to change the world.
ALU is the African Leadership University, and the first campus is here in Mauritius, and it's the African Leadership College. And the aim of ALU is to train the future leaders of Africa in many industries or many domains, so in government or in engineering or in business.
ALU is going to have a huge impact across the continent. I can see many young people go on to do great things, whether as business leaders or in government or for civil society.
These are people that are going to create new jobs or be leaders in their own industries to help essentially employ as many people as possible in the coming centuries.
We set this very lofty goal of developing 3 million leaders for Africa by 2060. And why? Because we think leadership is the most important ingredient for transforming Africa. Right? It's the greatest need that Africa has right now.
The primary attractor of talent to ALU, not just as staff but also as students, is its mission and its vision, right? This desire to create an entire generation of African leaders.
I'd like to look back one day and say, I joined this venture when it was 12, 15 people, and we didn't know what the future would hold, but today I can take solace in the fact that there are these successful people who came through ALU who may not otherwise have been as successful.
The mission of the project that we were brought in to do first was, okay, launch an MBA program. You have 4 months, put 50 paying MBA students into this program starting 4 months from now, 5 months from now. And let's get that thing rolling, right? That will, generate income that will allow us to grow it, scale it, as well as fund the undergraduate program, which was building and scaling and launching multiple campuses. The vision for that was to get 25 campuses of 10,000 students across the continent of Africa over the next 30 years. Campus A was in Mauritius. Campus B we launched in Kigali, Rwanda. Campus C is just opened in Nairobi, Kenya. So that was the first mission, like the beachhead, right? Okay, 50 MBA students, 4 months from around the continent, go.
The caliber of people that they're attracting are those who are aligned with the mission of creating the next generation of Africa's leaders, ethical and entrepreneurial leaders who, is that the right phrase?
Yep.
Yeah, who will, without a doubt, change the default future of a continent of 1 billion people. So before using Infusionsoft, the team at ALU was using Gmail for a bulk of their communication. When they wanted to get a message out, they would literally type up a Gmail draft and then paste in as many contacts as they could handle and use the BCC function to get it out. This is how a lot of businesses bootstrap when they're starting up. And at that point, the MBA program at ALU was very much a bootstrap small business. So I think it's safe to say that technology was making their lives harder, not easier.
So when I first came on, we had a different CRM at the time, so we used that quite a bit. But it was quite clunky. So a lot of times we also did a lot of things manually. So we did a lot of mail merge using different tools. So sometimes using Excel, sometimes using Google Sheets. We did a lot of BCC if you needed to send a lot of emails to a lot of people and you didn't want to do the work of doing it manually.
What we were looking for was a tool that was great as a CRM, but could also do a lot of the marketing automation pieces. So previously, the tool worked okay as a CRM, but we were running our marketing automation off, say, Everlytic or MailChimp because we did not like the campaign features that existed in Agile CRM.
Working backwards, what Fred understood was we need a more effective way and a systematic way to take applications at scale and process those applications, communicate with all of those applicants and then students and so forth, and be able to have data long term that we can go back to. Okay, so that was problem one to solve. Problem two is how do we get more of those? Once we have that machine, how do we fill a giant funnel full of those so I can put 20 campuses, right, 25 campuses on this continent over the next couple of years? Because we're not talking, the first class, they got 9,000 applications for 72 students, which was at the time, and maybe still today, is the most rigorous application and acceptance ratio, right, in the world, more than Harvard, right? It was extremely rigorous to get in, and so it was, we're not going to have 72. We're going to have 250,000 students at a given moment in this university in the next 30 years or so. We need systems that can get us there and then keep us there. So that was the task.
So when we set out to build automation and to introduce Infusionsoft to the ALU organization, we started with the MBA program because the MBA was brand new. They didn't have a status quo for us to disrupt. So we were able to build things with sort of a clean slate, so to speak. And then, if things worked, we had the option of introducing the same automation, the same technology to the rest of the organization. It's sort of like the business equivalent of using a carpet cleaner on a small spot in a discrete area to make sure things go smoothly before you go ahead and shampoo the whole rug. Now, fortunately for us, the automation we built within the MBA program worked, and we were able to use the same technology, the same systems to support the undergrad and ultimately the varying other factions of ALU.
I think the School of Business was the first team within ALU to use Infusionsoft, and it's been really great in a couple of fronts. One, allowing us the ability to sort of segment our base better, to understand who we're talking to, who's a real prospect versus who may not be as interested, seeing how people are engaging with our content. So very recently we did a campaign and the click rate wasn't good, but just knowing that just modifying the title could help us to to get a better gauge of people engaging with the content.
Colleagues on the business school team who did marketing and sales on that side were using Infusionsoft at the time. And so as we began to think about scale and ensuring that systems across teams were better integrated, we made an assessment of both tools, and it was obvious that Infusionsoft did a much better job for the guys who used it in the postgraduate program than the experience we were getting using Agile CRM for the undergraduate sales and marketing experience. So it really was comparing tools across teams and finding that they had a better tool.
So the goal was we'll go to 6 different cities on 6 different dates, obviously, and we'll try and talk to as many people within our target market as we can. And what the automation looked like was we had a sequence inviting people. So we began with a very large list for each different city. And you'd invite those people with targeted messaging for their specific city. And then you had sort of a sequence. So first email goes out, depending on what actions they take, you'd have a second one, you'd have a third one. So that kind of thing. And then once they registered, you'd also have a sequence, because there's usually a large drop-off between the number of people who register and the number of people who show up, because there's free events. So then you had another sequence there, just drumming up excitement, and again, very action-based. So depending on what actions they were taking, then they would receive slightly different messaging. And then after the event, you'd have the same thing. And so, but we needed to do this for 6 different cities where the message varied slightly for each one of them. So it would have been quite hard to do it without a system that allowed you to automate. Yeah.
The very first campaign we launched in Infusionsoft was a thank you for coming to an event campaign. Basically, we had run a lot of in-person events, and we have an integration with Eventbrite, which is our event registration tool. And so what that did was, days after the event, students got an email that said, hey, it was great to see you at the event. And that also became the basis for introducing them to who the representative for that region was. So it's, thank you for coming to the event, and by the way, I am your default person, because we've assigned contact ownership correctly in the tool. And they can then build these relationships and drive them through the funnel.
The solution is simple but not easy, right? And it's, okay, what's the journey we want people to have? What are the phases we're moving people through? It starts with systems. Because if you want any predictability, and you have to have predictability to actually accomplish anything, right? If you want predictability, you have to have patterns. The only way to have patterns is with systems. The same thing to repeat, over and over. And the only way to have systems is to create processes, right? Now, this is where technology comes in. If you want those processes to happen the same way every time, and you want to have data to see how well those processes are performing, well, then that's where technology has to get introduced. Yep. I want this journey to happen this way every time, and then I want data to see how well it did or didn't happen, how many calls we did or didn't make, how many emails were or were not opened. And that's all we did, is we looked at what is the journey we want, how are we moving people through, and how do we have visibility on each of those. And then this is what you were alluding to a minute ago. Great, we have a lot of opportunities. We're spending money to drive leads to create opportunities, and we're not getting back to them. We're spending money to not get the thing that we wanted. Great, what are the efficiencies? So there's leadership and there's training and there's coaching. There's also just operational efficiencies. And it's great, how can I make Kevin's job easier?
I think pretty much immediately. And I say immediately because that's the first time where we had our first sort of Pan-African on-the-ground recruitment drive. And Infusionsoft was what we used to automate the registration process, the campaign leading up to the registration, so getting people to register, following up, getting them to actually show up, and then post-event follow-up. So we began using Infusionsoft, I think the setup was done in late March. We began using it in April, and all of May, that's when we had our on-the-ground roadshow in 6 different countries. And I think all told, we had more than 1,000 attendees, and a lot more than that registrants. So I think the impact was quite immediate in that sense.
When our new admission cycle opened up for our current cycle now, being able to segment our existing contact base into different groups depending on what stage of the relationship we're in with them, what our histories were with them, and then creating 3 different emails to announce essentially the same news that our application cycle was reopened, and being able to a large number of contacts, and then being able to track how effective the email was, open rates, click rates for the different hyperlinks in the email.
How would you describe automation?
Listen, all of your clients, all the people that have decided to buy from you, they've gone through a journey. There's a pattern in the journey that they went through to buy that the ones that didn't buy didn't go through. So what if we just created that journey and had more people go through it and get more people to buy, right? So let's design what that is by looking at the patterns of success, and then let's systematize it and put the appropriate amount of technology, as little as possible and as much as necessary, so that it happens only every time. It saves us a bunch of time, and we have visibility into how well it's actually performing.
It doesn't necessarily replace humans.
Not at all.
It allows humans to be applied strategically, right? You create the same experience, you're just more judicious about like where you are spending human capital.
That's exactly right. And that enhances the outcome, right? So you're automating manual minutia so that humans can create more personalized experiences for people.
Now, one theme with this project was that we really wanted to make sure that the staff at ALU, the actual employees who were logging in, understood what was being built for them, why it was built that way, and how to use it, right? At the end of the day, Infusionsoft is just a tool, and like any tool, it is only as powerful as the person who wields it. So we used the Monkeypod virtual courses to make sure that anyone who was logging into Infusionsoft really understood how to do their job, that Infusionsoft was making their life simpler and not harder.
Looking at started apps, I don't just want to know how many started apps there are. I want to know percentage completion of started apps. I want to know how are they engaging with us when we send them comms, how many people are still engaging with the comms that we're getting through for the drip campaign. And then when I ask, they're able to give me answers almost immediately. Within the hour, so I'm able to get responses. So for my decision making, it's very helpful because when I'm having a conversation with Fred, I have numbers to back up whatever I'm saying, and I think that makes it easier.
So I began to see real value in Infusionsoft around our first application deadline. In the week leading up to the application deadline, we'd have daily sprints, call sprints, where we'd call for, at least 3 hours. We'd prioritize who would reach out to depending on their progress through the application. Thanks to the integration between Infusionsoft and our application, our online application portal, we're able to track each applicant's progress within Infusionsoft without having to go onto both platforms to organize ourselves. So just using Infusionsoft, we're able to filter for people who only had the last component left, and we're able to just focus on those on a particular day, and then focus on another group who may have had like half of it left earlier in the week. So it really helped with our strategizing.
I feel empowered in that I can focus on the things that I need to do, think through and design effective campaigns, and trust that the tool is helping figure out the other pieces. And so rather than spend a lot of my time, crunching numbers in spreadsheets and doing all of the things that help me measure, I can, with a click of a button, easily see what's happening.
So I think a lot of entrepreneurs and people who want to grow and scale their business, they think marketing automation and tools like Infusionsoft, they think that, oh, that's something I'll get to when I can get to it, when I earn it, when I grow big enough that I can focus on it.
When I have time for it,
right?
or yeah.
It's like, no, this is the thing that gets you there.
Yeah.
This is what gets you there. And it doesn't have to be big and overly complex. It doesn't have to be heavy, and it doesn't have to be expensive, but it is systematic thinking with the appropriate amount of technology to facilitate a journey that's going to get you there.
We also have created at least 3 different drip campaigns, right? The first being for prospects, leads that have not started an application. So top of the funnel that we are trying to lead towards an application start. So that's the first drip campaign, that's the general one, and it tends to be the largest one. And then we have a more refined list of contacts who have started the applications, who then proceed into the next drip campaign, the applicant drip campaign. And finally, for those who have submitted an application, we have the post-application drip campaign.
So we designed a pretty comprehensive nurture process to encourage prospects to begin their application, to stay in touch with them throughout the process of applying, and then ultimately to follow up with them as they awaited their admissions decision. So we broke that campaign into 3 sections: the pre-application, the mid-application, and the post-application. And actually, the content in those campaigns is nearly identical. It's the same 19 emails no matter where you are. The key is there's a baton pass. So if you're at email 5 when you finish or when you start your application, you'll start off on email 6 in the mid-application. If you are at email 9 when you complete your application, you'll pick up at email 10 in the post-application nurture process. Now, the way that we handled that was we broke the nurture journey up into these chunks, right? With an email here, 6 emails here, 6 emails here, and 6 emails here. And this entire process would stop when they started their application. Now, the next nurture campaign would begin with that same tag. So once they got that tag, they would transition to this new one. And the call to action in this campaign was, hey, go continue your application rather than go start your application. So structurally, the only difference here is we've added these empty sequences to give us the decision diamond. And that decision diamond is what allows us to determine should they receive this email, or if it's redundant, just bypass it. And we use that decision diamond between each of the various chunks of automation to determine where they left off in the previous sequence and therefore where they should pick up. And then the same process it happens that once they complete their application, it moves them to the last section of this drip process. Now, the content here is like I said, it's identical. It's the same follow-up, the same emails, but once they have completed their application, we no longer need a call to action. It's really just to build rapport, to give them context about the university and our mission, and of course to get them excited about ultimately enrolling as an ALU student.
Probably my favorite statistic of that, and from our MBA from a Night series, is actually from the people who registered to attend but actually didn't show up. And of that, over 1,200 people who registered but didn't attend, we got 8 students out of that group. And through our additional nurturing campaigns, whether it was our virtual events like follow-up webinars and other drip campaigns and so forth, we took those interested people and worked them through our campaigns and drove more applications from that group, and again got 8 students, which is almost $250,000 of revenue for us from people who didn't attend our event. The sales team reduced from 3 students to we had 1 person on that, right? And the applications for the undergraduate class, the goal was 5,000. If we had 5,000, the goal was to try to get 10,000. We had 17,000 applications come through, and we had to build a machine that could take 30,000, 50,000, 100,000, and that's ultimately what we left in place.
You can't put that type of strain on humans.
In the old CRM, we could not do lead assignment correctly, so contact ownership was a bit complicated. What we did with Infusionsoft was we basically said, look, these are all the leads we have, import them into Infusionsoft, and then we set up logic for assigning ownership. So once that was done, from the very first day, every single rep of mine who logged in immediately could tell these are all the people in my region at different stages in the funnel. Right? So the whole idea of having a funnel that you can work was not something that we had previously. And that was instant value from the very moment Justin and Greg set it up. Every rep could immediately see what it is that they were doing.
So when a new prospect was tagged as being an MBA prospect, they would be added to this campaign where they would sit in a holding tank. Now, the whole purpose of this holding tank was to just contain those contacts in a sequence while a Zap ran. So over in Zapier, we had set up a process to listen for that original tag, to only continue if the contact had a country on file, and then to look up from this spreadsheet the country that contact lived in and the corresponding region here, so that we could assign the owner based on that region, right? So we used that information. Once the zap finished, we would trigger this, and then we had rules set up to, if they were in zone 0, put them here. If they were in zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, zone 6, etc. Right? And then in zone 0, they would be assigned to Sam, and you can see that corresponds with what we have set up here on the spreadsheet. The reason we built it this way and that we used Zapier to accomplish that lead distribution logic or algorithm is because there are 54 countries on the continent of Africa alone, and so setting up a decision diamond based on the country that the contacts were in would have been immensely complex to configure, let alone maintain. And we needed a way that we could easily shuffle and adjust which countries were assigned to which region, which was assigned to which owner or teams of owners. And as we hired new staff members and new sales reps, that process was constantly evolving. So by managing it on a spreadsheet, it allowed us to keep the campaign relatively simple, just having the 7 different permutations here. And then once the owner had been assigned, we could simply create the opportunity and apply the tag that moves them into the actual pipeline. And from there, the reps were just using their dashboards to manage these leads and to follow up with them.
The biggest thing that Infusionsoft did is it provided a solution that was easy to use, and therefore that people adapted more easily than they did our old one, which then gave us a really good sort of master list because we were all doing it from the same source point.
Students felt like they were cared for because even though these were automation emails, they were personal. And many people would reply to these emails and then start off a conversation around their interest in our university and why they find us to be a unique school. And these are things that technology through Infusionsoft is allowing us to be able to do for thousands of applicants that we could never do on a one-on-one basis.
The company and the software has changed my life.
Without a doubt. Automation goes beyond software, right? It's shaping the fabric of my life. It's why I can have a 2-hour lunch on a Wednesday or struggle to remember what day of the week it is. It's because all of these things are happening not by chance, but by design and by intelligent and intentional technology.
That.
If you think about return on investment for the tool, I think it's really high. It does a pretty good job handling large volumes of contacts and very complex campaigns that we may not have been able to build in some other tools. And it does all this without breaking the bank. So if you think about what it costs per user and what you get as a user of the tool, I think that the ROI is definitely really high.
I think that it helps us establish trends and patterns of behavior that can then help us create more systems to implement within Infusionsoft.
Because the problem with having to track a lot of things in your head is that it gets very stressful very quickly. And having a system where you're sure you can always go for a master record and you can always see, okay, this happened yesterday and then this is scheduled to happen tomorrow. This is a task for next week. And then having all of that housed within the one place that holds your customer data, I think that is really, really helpful.
To be able to sit in these weekly meetings and then get straight to the numbers and ask ourselves what's working or not is a relief that saved us hours upon hours of spreadsheets and exporting data from the CRM and trying to clean it up and do all that kind of stuff.
If we didn't have Infusionsoft, I believe that we'd need at least another 5 people to handle the volume of interest in the program, and being able to give everyone just about the same amount of attention. We'd certainly need at least 8 to 10 people.
We all need to be at a particular level to actually have an impact, and the more of us get over the finish line, the better for us all.
So the lesson here, if I can be so bold as to distill it down into a singular bullet point, is to focus on the customer's journey, to focus on the actual experience you are creating for them. And if you want to unpack that a little further, here was the approach that we took. We began by mapping the high-level milestones. For the ALU journey, it was to request information from the website, to register for an event, to attend the event, to schedule a consultation with one of our admissions reps, to begin their application, to finish their application and the 9 stages in between there, and then ultimately to accept their enrollment decision and to show up for the first day of their first semester. Now, your milestones will of course look different, but the second step here is going to be exactly the same. It's to use technology, systems, and automation to pave the path in between those milestones, to make it easy for your prospects to proceed down that journey and to ultimately make it enjoyable, to create an experience that facilitates the results that we want in a way that is enjoyable and value driven for the prospect. Now, this approach, this mindset, it is not dependent on tools, and it is not unique to a specific industry or business model. It is a universal formulaic approach that worked for ALU. It continues to work for Monkeypod, and I believe it can work for your business as well.